and I'll go to studio dot okay, this is CSOE13, the technology, wait, okay, so I'll send you the link for today's YouTube live stream. Okay, I have sent you the link for today's YouTube live stream, and now I'll share my screen. Okay. Okay, I hope the stream is fine, going on fine. Right. And you are able to see the slides now, right, students?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So last week what we had done, or last class what we had done was the CSS. Okay, we learned about the CSS box model, the page sections, right? And we figured out how we can actually give the same CSS to multiple sections, and or how one single section can actually inherit of different CSS from different CSS classes. Okay, so we learned about the IDs, classes, and how we can apply the classes in the CSS, right, and how we will apply the same classes in the span and the div in the HTML, right? And we have seen how we can use the CSS context selectors, right, where we have selector 1 and selector 2, where selector 2 is inside the selector 1 tag, okay, and we have selector 1 greater than selector 2, where selector 2 is strictly the child of selector 1. There cannot be anything in between selector 2 and selector 1. Okay, so selector 2 has to be directly inside the selector 1 for this kind of property to be applied. That is the one, the CSS context selectors. Okay, and we have seen some examples, and we have seen the inline sections, that is with the span class, right? So the div, we have seen how we will divide the pages, HTML pages, into different sections, divisions. Okay, and span is just to apply a particular style. But okay, of course, but when you apply a particular style, right, it will be visible in the page. So otherwise it has no specific on-screen appearance. Then we mentioned about the CSS box model and how the document flow block and inline elements are, and how we will apply the properties for the CSS for the borders for a particular style. Say for example, in this example they have given a h2 tag as a selector, and the border has been set to be explicitly 5 pixel thick, okay, and solid and red, and that's the result that we see here. Of course, when you use Microsoft Word or Google Docs or LibreOffice Writer, right, you can see that you can actually create boxes. You can also set the border to be 0 pixels, meaning that the border will be invisible. Okay, so all of these things can be applied in the CSS as well, just like how we have done with the border 5 pixels solid red. So this is how you will actually give multiple values, okay, for the different attributes regarding to the border. So we have the thickness, style, and then the color. Okay, and then we have seen the different border properties. We have taken a look at border example, where we set a different border for the left and a different border for the bottom. Okay, so border left we have thick dotted, and we have the color CC0088, which is defined in the hex code. Okay, and then we have the border bottom style, which is actually a double line. Okay, the rest of the attributes, like whether it is continuous or dashed or dotted, it will take the default values, and it will take the default values with regards to the color as well. since we have specified only one single value double over here for the border bottom style property, correct. So that is how we will do with CSS. Then we can also mention rounded corners. Say for example, even if you are using Microsoft Word or Google Docs or LibreOffice Writer or any what you see is what you get editor, right? You will be able to see that you will be able to put borders, and you will also be able to round the borders. You don't have a 90-degree corner at the border, okay. You can have a radius at the border, and this is how we will do it. So we have seen the properties for the padding, okay. And for padding and margin, what you need to understand is you have the content, then you have the padding, and then you have the margin. All right. So the content, height and width, then the padding left and right, and top and bottom, and then the margin bottom, left, top and right, correct. So this is how we will define the CSS box model. So this is how the CSS box model is actually defined as. So you have the content at the innermost part. You can have the border or the margins, I mean the margin and the padding to be different, okay. So that is why you have the left and the right padding to be different numbers. It need not be the same numbers, which means that the content can be aligned either left or right, or either top or bottom, or it can be in the center as well, okay. And we have also seen that in this particular example, IE6 doesn't do this right with regards to the CSS box model, right. So this is one important consideration that you have to make when you are dealing with web page designs. Say for example, when you are going to see it in Internet Explorer or Firefox and Google Chrome or Opera or Safari, you can understand that more or less all the browsers except the IE6 will be implementing all these specifications accurately, and hence the rendering will be accurate. But in the IE6 the rendering may not be accurate, and this is a document flow with multiple blocks and inline elements in each of the blocks, okay. And okay, so these are all examples with different selectors and different styles, okay. We have actually seen all of these last week, okay. And so today I am going to the next part. So that was a quick recap about the class, and now we are going to look at how we can actually position and keep the CSS box elements, right. The CSS box is there, so how do we keep it where? For example, if I have to be very specific about that particular thing, right, then let us take a look at the Google Chrome window itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to resize the Google Chrome window by pulling the lower rightmost corner, placing my mouse pointer at the lower rightmost corner and then pulling it across, and you can see that as I pull it across, right, the view, the thing that you see on the page, right, it also kind of changes. Earlier when the people, the list of the people were put on the right side, now it is put on the left side, okay. And you can see that this is almost similar to how you would see it on the mobile phone, correct? I wouldn't say complete, okay. So with different screen resolutions, you can see the way it has been getting aligned or how it is being positioned. So this is actually very important. For example, if I press F12 in this particular screen and I go to let's say, yeah, okay, I can select the the resolution at which I want to see this particular page in, okay. So this is something that I have shown on Google Chrome. So I pressed F12, which was for inspect elements, and along with that over there is a toggle device toolbar, okay. So in this toggle device toolbar, you can actually select which device you might be looking the screen on, okay. So it could be Moto G4, Galaxy S5, Pixel 2, Pixel 2 XL, iPhone 5 standard edition, I believe, then iPhone 6, 7, 8, iPhone 6, 7, 8 Plus, iPhone X, iPad, iPad Pro, Surface Duo, Galaxy Fold. So there are a lot of phone models that are mentioned here, as you can see. Otherwise, you can also have an option to edit it. Say you can add a custom device. If a particular model is not there, you can add that, and all of these things are possible. All right. So let us take a look at one device screen. So I've just selected Moto G4. Now I'll select iPad. So you can see that on an iPad the screen may be using n number of pixels and x number of pixels in the height and the width. So over here it is 768 in the width and 1024 in the height for the iPad, and for the Moto G4 it is 640 by 360, okay, height by width, okay, and in the iPhone standard edition it is 568 by 320. So the reason why I am showing you this is, just like how the screen sizes on a mobile phone will differ, the same way the computer screen sizes also differs, okay. So what I can show you for that is, if I take the display settings of this particular computer, okay, so I've taken the display settings. All right, over here you can see that there is something called resolution, which is, when I click on it, it will show me the different resolutions that are possible on this particular computer screen. So you can see that I am right now using 1366 by 768, that is the resolution, and it is a 16:9 view, okay. So that's the normal modern day LCD or LED monitors, while on the bottom right you can see 1024 by 768. Those are like that is also given the aspect ratio as 4:3, which means that the ratio between the height and the width is 4:3, and for 1366 by 768 it is 16:9. So which means that the ratio between the height and the width is also different. So this is called a regular I'm not getting the correct usage. So it's a 4:3 display, and we have the 16:9 display. Okay, so that was, so which means that just like if I actually try to move the browser window now and resize the browser window, let us take another page, say for example google.com. okay, I went to google.com and I'm just resizing the page. Okay, I'm resizing the page and I'm making it like this. You can see that the search bar, which was positioned almost over here where I am hovering my mouse earlier when it was bigger, okay, has now moved to a different location. It is still in the page, of course it is in the page, and it is visible. It is the most prominent thing. The left and the right side margins and the borders and the padding, right, has actually reduced when I did that. Okay, so and when I try to resize the height of the window, you can see that up till some point the about, advertising, business, how search works, privacy terms and settings was visible, and at some point it becomes scrollable. Okay, now you need to scroll down the page to be able to see the content of the foot bar or the bottom bar, okay, where I am hovering my mouse pointer right now. So you can see that with different resolutions, the work, the job of the software engineer, right, or the web developer, the job of the web developer also increases with different resolutions of devices. Okay, meaning you need to find the rules, or you need to develop the rules for your page regarding how the elements will be positioned and displayed in various at various resolutions. Okay, So this is something that the developer has to do as a conscious effort. Okay, it doesn't happen automatically, which means that you need to look at the screen size, you need to measure the screen width, the height, you need to measure the size of the element that you're going to paste where, okay, and all of these things have to be done with regards to positioning the content on the page. Okay, so just let's start with this particular comic over here. Okay, so you can see that it is around afternoon 2 p.m. and at 2:03 p.m. after 3 minutes something has happened, and after some more time the person is still on the computer, okay, looking to solve the problem, and the person solved the problem at 2 a.m. approximately like 12 hours, right? And it's like the person has kind of slept off, and he is trying to fix the problem, and is kind of trying to recollect it from the dreams or from the sleep, how, or find a solution how to fix the problem. Okay, so it is the comic says that the person was trying to fix the formatting of something, and all the content somehow went to another side, okay, for no apparent reason, and now this person is trying to debug it. Okay, so the reason why this comic is shown here, or the reason why I have taken this much time to explain it, is for you to understand that this is not very easy, although it is not very difficult. Okay, as in the kind of work that you do with regards to web development, especially with HTML and CSS, it is very easy to break certain things. Okay, and it may not even show the exact error, where is the error happening. Okay, so in that situation it will be very difficult. Okay, and you need to be very careful about all the code that you have to make sure that the whole website works fine. So for example, let us say you are designing a content management system. So let me write it here at the end. Content management system like Joomla, Mambo, okay, Drupal, okay, WordPress. Okay, these are all different content management systems. Let us say that you are going to design a content management system. In that case, what all things you may have to design? You will have to design the HTML, CSS, the code, okay, the code for the CMS itself, okay, that is the server code. Okay, you may need some JavaScript, okay, which means that you are going to serve dynamic content. Okay, mostly with a content management system you are going to serve dynamic content, which means that the image that you are going to display on the screen may have a particular resolution, and it may be different, very different from usually how you will work with static content. Okay, so you will have to set the sizes of the content that is coming in. You will have to set all those things, fix it properly, and do the programming. So you can serve two kind of pages: static pages and dynamic pages. Okay, so over here if I go to iitt.ac.in, you can see that it is a simple static page. Okay, while if I go to my email inbox, right, and I click on refresh, it will fetch the number of emails I have, etc., and you can see that it is actually fetching the page in a dynamic fashion. Alright, so these are the two things way which we can display things. So with dynamic you just need with static you just need HTML and CSS. Okay, HTML and CSS is more than enough, and with dynamic you need HTML, CSS, server code, JavaScript, and all of those things. For the static pages also you may need some JavaScript, okay, for different actions that you want to perform. Okay, so the CSS float property. So we have been trying to understand how we will place the content in the correct position in the page when it is being rendered. Okay, so let us take an example over here. It's a div id, div with id sidebar. Okay, so it is a sidebar which is shown on the right side. So you can see that it is kind of dashed, it has a dashed border, and it is actually overlapping on the content boxes H1 and P. Okay, it is overlapping, or it is actually seen to be floating on top of H1 and P1 and P. Okay, so that is a div with id sidebar which has two other elements, text and another text. Okay, so you can actually use the CSS float property. You need to mention the side to hover on. It can be left or right. Okay, so which means where would that particular thing be hovering over, the particular floating element. So the floating element is removed from the normal document flow. Okay, so in the normal document flow, from today's recap session, we have seen that it can have multiple elements and multiple inline elements. So that's the normal document flow. While in this particular floating CSS property, right, the floating element is actually removed from the normal document flow. So it doesn't actually stick to the rules regarding how many pixels it should be away from the left element, or how many pixels should be away from the right element, and so on. It has overlapped in this particular example that we have seen. Okay, so the underlying text will get wrapped around as necessary. Okay, say for example, I am going to, if I, okay, I'll just tell you, if I'm going to have a develop my CV. I have, let's say I have developed my CV with all the content, and at the end I am going to place the picture. Okay, I am going to paste my passport size photograph on the top right of the document. So when I am going to put it, I will get multiple options. That is, whether I want to keep it as a free floating element, and if I am going to keep it as a free floating element, then how would the text under the element, or where the element, how would the text under that be behaving? Is it going to be completely resized, or is it going to realign based on different rules, etc.? Okay, so for example, let me try to show it to you. Okay, so let us say docs.google.com. okay, and let me take a simple let's take okay, let me create a new one. Let's say a report. Okay, so it has some content already in that. Okay, now I can actually image options. I can select yeah, I've clicked on the image now. Okay, I've clicked on the image now. Now on the bottom right, I can see there are different options that are given: inline, wrap text, break text, behind the text, in front of the text. So if I put it as in front of the text, right, you can see the content in the page has actually quite changed when I clicked on this. Let me put it back. Okay, so earlier when the content was looking like this, okay, it had introduction, lorem ipsum dollar sit emit. Okay, some text is there. Now when I click on the image and I click on a different orientation, say in front of the text, you can see that the lorem ipsum and the introduction part, right, has gone behind the image. So you can see that this image is kind of a floating element which is on top of the text. Now if I want, I can I can now, I've now selected a wrap text, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize the image. Okay, I just resize the image in the correct aspect ratio. I pressed shift button when I was resizing it. Okay, now I have selected a wrap text. So if I move it, if I move the image slightly towards the right, you can see that the text under the floating element has actually realigned and reorganized. All right, so you can see that. So this is exactly what is described in the CSS float property. Underlying text wraps around it as necessary. Just a minute, please. I'm getting a call. Okay. Okay, so this is how we will actually consider an some element to be floating. Okay, and this is an example. Okay, so similar way the float example is here. So we have a image tag that is here, that is used as a selector. So if it has image dot header icon, so header icon is the name of the class that we are going to use in the HTML. So image dot header icon float left. So we have specified in the CSS that there will be a header icon which is an image, a header icon class that will be used for a particular image, and that has to be on a floating left. And in the HTML we can see image source images/cola.jpg. What kind of addressing is it? It's a relative addressing. Alternate text koala and class header icon. Okay, and some text is there with regard adjoining the image. Okay, and you can see that it will be rendered somewhat like this, that you see on the bottom part of the slide. Okay, so you have the cola's image which is on the left side. Okay, and then you have the text that is wrapped around the particular content. Now this is a simple chat window kind of display that you can create. Say for example, if I use my WhatsApp, or if I use my messenger app on my computer, right, then I will see that the messages that I have sent and the messages that I have received will be shown differently. Okay, so this is an example on, so the on the topmost example, with the red background. Okay, where I am hovering my mouse pointer right now, it says I am not floating with no width set. Okay, so this one doesn't have any width set, but it is not a floating element as well. While the next one is a floating element, I am floating right, so it is floating towards the right position, and it also doesn't have the width set. Okay, and the third one, which with the blue background again, is a floating element which is floating to the right, but with the width not set. So the second one and the third one has the same properties. The difference between the second one and the third one is that the third one, okay, over here. So the first one is the with the black with the red background. The second one is the with the blue background. The third one is with the blue background, and the second one and the third one has the same properties, which are both floating towards the right, but the content is more in the third one. Okay, but my text is very long, so this paragraph doesn't really seem like it's floating at all. Okay, so that is how the output will be shown. Just checking whether the audio is coming through, and yeah, okay. And the fourth one, we have fourth left and fourth right. So the red one and the blue one. So the fourth one, which is in red, right, which is, it is not a floating element, but it uses 45% of the width with respect to the screen size. Okay, and I'm not saying with respect to whatever content that you are seeing, but with respect to the rendering that is shown at the middle. So it is not a floating element, but with 45% width. And the right side, the blue one, is also it is a floating element, while the one on the left side with the red background is not a floating element, and the right side one is a floating element with 45% width. And you can see that it has actually taken up a little bit more space with the box that is created as opposed to the box that is created at the second one. Okay, so second one has no width set, but it is just floating, because the fourth one, blue one, has a width set to be 45%, though the content is smaller, the text is smaller than the size of the box. It is still it has created some empty spaces. Okay, so often floating elements should have a width property value. If no width is specified, other content may be unable to wrap around the floating element. Okay, so if you do not specify the width for a floating element, then the other content will not be able to wrap around, because that is what I mentioned earlier. You know, when we work with the web development, the web developer has to work with regards to the rules for the page. Okay, so these are what I mentioned by the rules. So if you do not so you should understand that you know, there's something called UI UX. Okay, so there's something called UI UX. Let me show you that. UI/UX. Okay, stands for user interface and user experience. Okay, so let me tell you a simple example. So when I was in Gojek, there was a particular asphalt, I guess it is. Yeah. Advanced. Can I go here? Proceed to asphalt.web.io. Outdated communication colors. Instructor colors. Motion. Okay, components. Yeah. Badge notification. Okay, so yeah, so this particular thing, right, asphalt, that I am showing you, which is from when I was working in Gojek. It's a company, it's a ride hailing app company, but it has, like, it's a super app. It contains multiple applications, say, and at one point in time, right, Gojek wanted to make the designs uniform across all the different apps. Say Go Food is there, there is Go Ride is there, there is Go Car is there, Go Tix is there, Go Send is there, Go Massage, I guess. So which means that there are a variety of services that are being offered, and they wanted to make the, you know, user experience and the design very uniform across the different apps that they have. Okay, so how did they do it? How did they go ahead by solving that particular problem? If you think about it, right, you may not be able to realize how big this particular project that I have just mentioned to you is. Okay, it is actually a pretty big project, because you have to make the UI changes to all the applications, which are managed by, let us say, some 30 teams. Okay, so all the 30 teams have to now start using a particular theme. So how do you first design a particular theme? For that, there has to be some team. Okay, so that was the design team. So we had a team called the design team, who was involved in the UI and UX designs. So don't take it lightly. Okay, it is a very important task that they have done. They have not only designed the icons and the placements and everything, but they also designed so when I just go to Asphalt, it says Asphalt is Gojek's very own design language system. This is a collection of guidelines and components which can be used to create amazing user experiences. Okay, so meaning that with the bits and pieces of all the components that you have taken, you have designed as a design team. It could be the icon, it could be the text box, it could be the content, okay, it could be the confirmation box, or any of those things. Okay, so all of these things have to be integrated, and for this they developed their own design language. Okay, and this is something called as a domain specific language. Have you heard of DSL? Domain specific language. Okay, so this is an example of a domain specific language which is Asphalt over here that I am showing. You can see that it has different ways of or it has different themes that the that the developers have to adhere to, and for the same they have used they have created their own programming language also, which is actually a design specific language. Okay, so you can see that there are different states, there are different with notification, without notification, there are different cases. Okay, so all of these design, right, were made and had to be integrated. So which means that I told you they had to not only just create the icons and the text placements and the rules for that, but they also created the design domain specific language called Asphalt. Okay, so do not take the UI and UX as a very light thing. You can understand that it is probably one of the most important driving factors with regards to the user retention and with regards to the user experience as well. Say for example, if somebody goes to a website which is not very user friendly, where the person doesn't really understand what will happen next if I click on a particular button, right, then that website may start losing people coming. Okay, so people would not want to visit the website again. Okay, so this is a problem that could happen. So the UI UX is something that is the most important and the most crucial elements. And even if we are just creating a very simple chat application, right, if you do not design it properly, it may not be visually appealing, and it may not be also giving me the necessary input. Okay, regarding just a minute guys, I'll attend this call. Hello sir, ഞാൻ ക്ലാസ്സിലാണ്, ക്ലാസ് കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് വിളിച്ചാൽ മതിയോ? Okay sir. Okay, so yeah, so this is very important that you design the thing. So first thing was it has to be visually appealing, and the next thing is that the placement of the elements will also play a crucial part in in me understanding what the whole information given is, right? Say if I go to a particular website and I do not understand how to navigate, where to get the information, where to get the next updated content, then I will be very unhappy, and I would not want to go to that website again. Okay, so this is general tendency, which means that it has to be visually appealing as well as it is easy for us to understand. Okay, now we have different properties. So the over here we have two tags, two selectors, P and H2. So the P tag uses fuchsia color, okay, as the background, and the H2, right, uses a clear white and background color cyan. Okay, so the clear disallows floating elements from overlapping this element. Okay, so if you use the property called clear, right, it will not allow the floating elements to overlap that particular element that we have defined it to be clear. Okay, So it can be left, right, both or none, which means that it cannot overlap either on the right side, or it cannot overlap either on the bottom side, or it cannot overlap either on the top side, or both. Okay. And so here we have an example with HTML and CSS. So the CSS says that we have a p tag with border 2 pixel dashed and black and image floating towards the right. Okay, and over here you can see that there is particular content in the HTML with an images/xkcd.png. Okay, the man in the hat is the alternate text, and the content in the page is xkcd is a webcomic of romance, sarcasm, math and language. Okay, so here we want the p containing the image to extend downwards so that its border encloses the entire image. Okay, but since you have put it as a float, it has not happened, and you have to now define the size of this p block if you want, so that you will be able to place it properly. But then there is a problem again, if you are going to resize the page, etc., right? This particular the way that you are going to apply the rules may get conflicting, okay, and may not yield the sufficient results that you are expecting. Okay, so so if you want to do it this way, right, how you want to extend the border or the p block, because the p, right, is the parent block, and the image element is inside the p. So in essence what you really wanted was the image should be treated as a content on the p block. So which means that if it is treated as a content in the p block, then the border at the bottom, right, should have gone below the image. So on the right side, so if we can use overflow property. Okay, so specifies what to do if an element's content is too large. Okay, can be auto, visible, hidden, or it can be scrolling. Okay, so this is how we can actually solve this particular problem with the overflow property. With the over here we have used the value as hidden. Okay, and next is you can actually place a CSS. Okay, so we have seen that the elements have to be either floating or it has to be positioned at a particular place, right? So when you are specifying the position, you can specify the from the at what position it would be fixed. Okay, and from the right it is 10%, and from the top it is taking 45%. Okay, so that is the position that we have given. So you can actually give static values, so you can give some default positions, or you can give some relative positions, so offset from its normal static position. Absolute, it can be an absolute position, a fixed position within its containing element, or it can be a fixed position within the browser window. So you have top, bottom, left and right positions of the boxes corners. So that is the position property. So let's say if you do it somewhat like this, right, the division, add position fixed, right 10%, top 45%, the content would be somewhat rendered like this. Here I am. You can have absolute position, so which means that at the left it will leave 400 pixels, and at the top it will leave 50 pixels. So if this is 0 0, right, then on the left it will take 400 pixels and the top it will take 50 pixels. So 400 pixels from the left and 50 pixels from the top is where the menu bar is placed, and this is an absolute position. But you can understand that from our earlier discussion in the class today, the size of the browser window, right, also matters. So which means that if this content is placed at an absolute position and the browser window is half the size of the window that we see here, right, then we will not be able to see the menu bar unless we use the horizontal scroll bar. Okay, so just like the floating ones, this one is also removed from the normal flow, because this will not overlap, but this will be placed on top of certain other elements, right? So removed from normal flow like floating ones, positioned relative to the block element containing them. Assume that block also uses absolute or relative position. Okay, so it is removed from the normal block, it is positioned relative to the block element, and the actual position is determined by the top, bottom, left and right values, and should often specify a width property as well. So if you are going to use an absolute positioning for an element, then you should specify the whether it is what are the absolute positioning values are determined by the top, bottom, left and right values, as well as the width property. So if you don't specify the width property, then it is possible that it can take the entire page width, and if you do not want that, then you should actually specify the width property. Okay, so this is position absolute for menu bar. Okay, so a division uses the ID menu bar, so that is why we have mentioned hash menu bar. So an ID will be used only once, correct? A class can be used multiple times, we have already discussed that. And we have the area, which is another ID, area 2. Okay, and this one, the position is relative. Okay, so the menu bar, the position was absolute, and in this one the area 2, the position is given as relative. Okay, so if you have div area 1 and div ID area 2, then the div ID area 2 is relative, meaning that it will appear after area 1 is shown, and then the menu bar is already at the fixed location, meaning that it will be shown as a absolute position. So absolute positioned elements are normally positioned at an offset from the corner of the overall web page. So I told you, let us say that where I have pointed my mouse pointer right now, that will be the 0, 0 position. So if you look at it as a Cartesian coordinate, as a then the origin will be over here where I have pointed my mouse pointer, which will be 0, 0, and then you will have the height and the width, offsets, etc. Okay, so absolute positioned elements are normally positioned at an offset from the corner of the overall web page. To instead cause the absolute element to position itself relative to some other element's corner, wrap the absolute element in an element whose position is relative. Okay, so this is actually to solve a small problem, to instead cause the absolute element to position itself relative to some other element's corner, or wrap the so if you have a absolute element that is to be positioned relative, and if it gets positioned relative to some other element's corner, okay, so not the page's corner, say for example div ID area 1, so this is one element, right? Then this p tag is another element. Now if you are going to place this absolutely, this div ID menu bar, what if it gets placed with respect to the boundaries of another element? Then the positioning can become incorrect. So for this reason, you have to wrap the absolute element inside another element whose position is relative. Okay, and then you will give the offset values for the absolute positioning for that particular absolute element within the relative position. So you have absolute positioning, you have relative positioning, and you have fixed positioning. So just like the normal ones, like the floating ones, we have removed the floating this fixed positioning element as well from the normal flow of the document. So this is positioned relative to the browser's window. Even when the user scrolls the window, the element will remain in the same place. So this is a fixed positioning. So unlike the absolute positioning and the relative positioning, where when I scroll the page, right, it has actually, the content has actually scrolled up or scrolled down. But you can see that on the left side, right, the links and the buttons, they have not moved, okay, because that is actually placed in some other way. Okay, so you have relative, absolute and fixed. But in fixed, right, you can see that for example, if I use Facebook, I do not want to show that as an example right now. So if I use Facebook, you can see that it can have a particular icon with regards to chat with your friend. Okay, so when you click on that, right, you can see that no matter what you do, you scroll up, down, left or right, okay, you will see that that particular element with regards to the chat will be placed exactly at the same location, and even if you scroll up and down or anything, it will still be visible at the same location. So that is displayed with respect to the browser's window. So it is fixed relative to the, or positioned relative to the browser's window, and even when the user scrolls, the window element will remain in the same place. So alignment versus float versus position. If possible, lay out an element by aligning its content. Okay, if alignment won't work, try floating the element. If floating won't work, try positioning the element. Okay, so first is you will try to align the element. Next is, if the aligning the element is not really getting the task done for you, you should try floating the element. And even if the floating the element doesn't work, then you have to try positioning the element. Okay, so with regards to the alignment, you can have horizontal alignment and vertical alignment. Okay, so you have text align and vertical align. So the horizontal alignment sets this on a block element. It aligns the content within it, not the block element itself. So the content that is in that particular block element will be aligned properly. Okay, and the vertical alignment set this on an inline element, and it aligns it vertically within the containing element. Okay, so it is, you should understand that these are all with respect to a particular reference. Either it is with reference to 00 of the page, or it is with reference to the sidebar of, or the page side. Okay, for the fixed position that we mentioned earlier. And so it is all relative to some reference. So even the absolute, it is based on a reference, right? You agree to me regarding that, right? So it has to be with regards to the reference 00 always, even if you try the absolute or the fixed positions, it is with regards to a reference. So you have to align first. If the alignment doesn't work, then you have to try floating the element and take it away from the normal document flow. Okay, so with the alignment, it will still be in the normal document flow. So when you try to float it, you will be able to now place it slightly better. So think of this as one element, this hand as one element and this hand as another element. So you can actually float one hand over the other and keep the content, say, in the bottom element wrapped or positioned relative the way you want. So you can try floating it. Even if floating doesn't work, then you will try positioning the element. Either absolute or fixed positioning are the last resort and should not be overused. Okay, so essentially this is how you will go ahead when you are developing a CSS. You should start with alignment options, then floating options and then positioning options, and you should not use the positioning options too much. Okay, just like how we have mentioned in C programming language, that we do not use the go to statements, right? Go to label, we don't use that kind of a programming with regards to C programming, and we generally discourage doing that. So same way, we will not want to use the positioning, the absolute and the fixed positioning. That will be the last resort and should not be used, should be avoided if possible, and if it is used, then it should be the last resort. So you can have the boxes having the properties, size properties, width, height, minimum width, okay, are ignored for inline boxes, and margin top, margin bottom are ignored, but margin left and margin right are not, okay. And the containing box blocks text align property controls horizontal position of the inline boxes within it. So with the text align, right, you will control the property regarding where the text will be aligned, okay. And text align does not align block boxes within the page. So you should understand that if I say that this is the box, okay, and I have some content, okay, let's say this is the content that I want to put in the box. So it can be either center aligned, it can be in the left aligned, or it can be in the right aligned, okay, or the top aligned, bottom aligned, okay, or bottom left, or something like that. But what you should understand is that it is not going to move the box relative to the page's size or anything, okay. It will just move the content inside the box. So each inline box's vertical align property aligns it vertically within its block box. So let us say we have a selector h2 in the CSS, the h2 tag that we will use in the HTML. It is display inline, background color yellow, okay. So you have the display property here, so sets the type of the CSS box model an element is displayed with, okay. So this will display inline, okay. But if you use this, right, the problem with this is that if you use some elements, then for the sake of rendering those elements, it could actually make the rest of the placements of the page totally a chaos, okay. It can alter the page layout radically, and for that reason we should use it sparingly. So you should definitely try and use these properties, okay, and see what happens with different values. So this is an inline element, which means that this is one h2 and this is another h2, and this is actually, you know, unlike showing it as one after the other, it is showing as, you know, on the right side of the previous one, okay. So here we have a unordered list, okay, not unlisted, an unordered list in the HTML, and the list items, okay, that we have seen in the HTML earlier. So here we have an ID top menu. So for that hash top menu and the list, we should display it as inline with border 2 pixels, solid gray, margin right 1 em, okay. So with this particular way, you can display the elements in the same line with the spacing, okay. So lists and other block elements can be displayed in inline, flow left to right on the same line. Width is determined by the content, and block elements are 100% of the page width. So if you are going to consider a block element, then you know it will be using the 100% of the page width, unless you specify the width, okay. So that is with regards to CSS. Now I had asked you a question, or I had given you a question last week. What was the question? Does anyone remember? Students? Am I still connected to the class? Students, does anyone remember what question I gave in the class last week? I had asked you to do something as an exercise.
To create a CV using
Yes,
HTML.
yes, correct, right? So, has anyone tried doing that? Anyone? Okay, I think nobody has tried doing that. So, let me give you more time. I had given you an example of the overlap CV that I had created. So you do one thing. I'll do one thing. Okay, I will add on to the questions. So let me create another lesson. Why? Yeah. Okay. So first one is create a CV in HTML / CSS which looks exactly the same. Juno, quiet. Same as create a CV. Juno, create a CV in the HTML or CSS which look exact which look exactly the same as your printed CV or CV in PDF format. Okay. Second one is create the same CV as a HTML CV with multiple pages or a single page with easy navigation, etc. Okay, so this is first one is a CSS exercise, while the second one is actually a designing exercise. All right, and so you please do this, each of you. Okay, and this will be part of your assignment number 1. Okay, so if I find better good questions to add here, I will add those questions as well. So otherwise this is part of your assignment 1. Okay, or your assignment 1. If I, as I told you, if I get more good questions, I will add those. Okay, so that was regarding the floating and positioning with regards to CSS. Now you can just go on the web, getting started with CSS. Okay, so you can just search on the Google for getting started with CSS. Okay, you will come across a lot of web pages. Let us say you can try the GitHub one, or you can try the free code camp. It says learn CSS in 5 minutes, but can you become a pro in 5 minutes? Definitely no. Okay, there is no shortcut to success. There is no shortcut to becoming proficient in a particular language in just 5 minutes. Okay, you have to definitely sweat and think and put that much of time in for any particular exercise for you to become very good. Okay, so you can have GitHub, you can have W3 schools. W3, and then you have W3 schools. So let's take a look at different CSS, getting started with CSS. Okay, so all of it kind of tells you the property value and the selectors information, right, and the classes ID selector. Okay, then applying CSS to HTML. So you have to definitely start by trying it out. Okay, so this is example from github.io, and this is from w3.org. Okay, so this is an example for starting with HTML and CSS. Okay, so I do not know how you will design the second one, because the second question over here is quite open ended, meaning that it is totally up to your imagination how you will get me the proper thing. But you have to make sure that you submit the proper error free HTML and CSS. Okay, you can also mention, if you are going to get inspired by a particular project or a particular thing, you should mention where you got inspired from and what are the changes that you made there as well. All right. And so from the W3 schools, we have seen that it already gives us a example, and we also has a try it yourself feature, right? Otherwise, we know that we have to save it as a CSS file, and we have to save the HTML as a HTML file, and then link the CSS as an external CSS from the HTML file and use it, correct? So that is with regards to CSS so far. Okay, now let us just quickly go to the IIIT website curriculum. Okay, and
Excuse me, sir.
yes, please.
Sir, can we make the resume instead of CV?
Okay, resume is the elaborate one, right? Who asked this question?
It's Mrs. Shravani.
Yes, Shravani. So is it the elaborate one?
No, sir, in resume, it's CV is elaborated one than resume, I guess.
Yeah, so I want the elaborated one. Okay, the complete curriculum vitae, which contains all the details, etc. So if there is something that you want to showcase or something, like some work examples or something, right, that you want to showcase with regards to the HTML CV, with regards to the second question, you will be able to do that. But with regards to the first one, you will have a lot of restrictions because it has to look somewhat similar to how your existing CV in PDF format would look like. Can you be a bit more specific, Shravani?
No, sir, I mean in resume, we will add I will just give the names, right, sir? As you told in CV, we will give
Yes,
we'll give more explanation.
exactly. So a resume is a one-page summary of your work experience and background relevant to your job you are applying to. Not that way, okay? It has to be a proper detailed longer entry, okay, with experience, certificates, publications, okay, all of those things. You can also include some music and everything if you want as a background, when you go from, so you want to showcase your school in KG, you can do that as well. Okay, so it is totally up to your imagination. But of course, I am interested to see this as a class project or a class assignment, while you may not be submitting the same to any employer. Okay, for an employer you will be submitting a different thing, or a stripped down version of what you would be creating right now, okay, or a modified version of what you would be creating now. Okay, so
Okay, sir, thank you, sir.
Okay, so next is, before I go into PHP, right, we wanted to see the syllabus of CSOE13 once again. Web technology. Okay, so we can see that we have tried HTML and CSS, and we haven't really tried looking at XML. Okay, so let us take a look at XML for a moment. Okay, so yeah, I think I've uploaded the different content in the folder, right, which contains the course material file also, right? See this file that you are seeing here, students. Okay, let me just check.
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, okay, fine. So let us search for XML. Okay, so XML is the next thing that I want to show you. So for that, let me, right, how do I get rid of this search? Control F. Okay, I think okay, so XML. Okay, So we have learned say, let me start another one. We have learned HTML and CSS, okay, and HTML stands for hyper text markup language, and we have also looked at markup language and markdown language. All right, and we know that the HTML, right, it uses tags, etc. Okay, so with regards to the tags, right, let me ask you a question. What is the difference between C language identifier and keyword? What is the difference between the identifier and keyword in C programming language? So an identifier means that it is a name that we give for a particular variable or a function, and it can be a user defined name with certain rules. It cannot start with a numeral number, and it cannot start with certain characters, etc. Okay, that's an identifier. A keyword is an identifier which is reserved. That's the difference between identifier and keyword. So same way, in your HTML and XML, right, the code almost looks similar, while for HTML, right, we mainly use it for web page development or web pages. Okay, we mainly use it for web pages, while the XML, right, is for data storage and data sharing. Okay, so that is what I would say. Okay, so HTML and CSS, the code almost looks similar, and for the XML, what we mainly will use it for is data storage or data sharing, while the HTML is mainly used for web pages. Okay, so now let us take a look at XML. So XML stands for extensible markup language. XML is a markup language which is much like HTML. Okay, XML was designed to carry data and not display data. Okay, so XML was designed to encode data inside that, to give some structure to the data and store it in the file and later retrieve it. Okay, so XML tags are not predefined. Okay, so that is one major difference. So the reason why I told you about C identifier and keyword is that an identifier is not predefined, while a keyword is a reserved or predefined identifier. Okay, so in HTML HTML has predefined tags, while XML tags are not predefined. Okay, so that is the difference between HTML and XML. How many of you know Python programming language? Can we find so there's a raise hand here, right? Can people, yeah, Avinash knows Python programming language. Rishitej knows Python programming language. Vimuri Bhavana knows Python programming language. Okay, so few people know. Okay, have you come across a package called Beautiful Soup? Rakesh Naik also knows Python programming language. So all the four of you and the rest of you know who knows Python programming language. Can you please respond in the chat box whether you have heard of a package called Beautiful Soup, or have you worked with Beautiful Soup? Okay, I am assuming a no to be an answer for this one because nobody has responded. Oh wait, somebody has responded. Okay, yeah, no is the answer. Nobody has mentioned. So let's search for Beautiful Soup. Okay, so if you look at Beautiful Soup, right, Beautiful Soup is a Python package for parsing HTML and XML documents. It creates a parse tree for parsed pages which can be used to extract data from HTML, which is useful for web scraping. So I'm just scrolling over this particular thing because in the YouTube stream my video will be somewhere in this location, right? So yeah, so Beautiful Soup is a Python package for parsing HTML and XML documents. It creates a parse tree for parsed pages that can be used to extract data from HTML, which is useful for web scraping. Okay, so that is Beautiful Soup. And if you want to start using Beautiful Soup, the only reason why you may start using it would be for XML and HTML parsing. Okay, so in this particular example, right, it says from Beautiful Soup for import Beautiful Soup, soup is equal to Beautiful Soup. So we created an instance, and so the soup is the particular HTML document with the HTML parser, and in that document, right, we have the entire document here. And when you try soup.title, right, it would have already done the parsing for you and will give you the title, right? So from this particular thing it will extract the title. So if you want to look at the title name, then you can type soup.title.name, soup.title.string, okay, soup.title.parent, so which is the parent tag. So which means that it is kind of giving you the entire structure of the HTML. And if you are going to use it with XML, you will be doing the program almost similar. So take a look at the Beautiful Soup if you really want to see what is being done. So Beautiful Soup supports the HTML parser included in Python's standard library, but it also supports a number of third-party Python parsers like the LXML parser, etc. Okay, or the HTML5 lib parser. Okay, so you can have the HTML parser, LXML, and a lot of things. Okay, so this was just an introduction to Beautiful Soup, and yeah, Pawan Kalyan Jada has worked on Beautiful Soup. Okay, so what did you do in the project, Pawan, with Beautiful Soup?
Sir, I've used to scrape the data from Wikipedia.
Exactly, correct. Yeah. So even I have worked on that, and I've done that about 12 years back, and I have also done the same thing, like scraping the web, etc. Okay. So now, what is the difference between HTML and XML? XML is not a replacement for HTML. XML and HTML were designed with different goals. XML was designed to be a transport and store data. Okay, so XML was designed to transport and store data with focus on what data is. Okay, while HTML was designed to display the data with focus on how data looks. So HTML is about displaying information, while XML is about carrying information. Correct? So that is what we mentioned by XML is for data storage and data sharing, and not for displaying the content. So both are made for two different things. Okay, so XML is just like HTML. It's just that XML doesn't use any predefined tags. So it uses only user defined tags. So XML doesn't do anything. Okay, it's just a way to store the data into a file. Okay, and how you will read the data later and parse it and understand from that particular file. Say for example, so XML was created to structure, store and transport information, and the following example is a note to Chintu from Ravi stored as XML. So here, right, you can see that if you have an XML file and have this content, it means that there is one note in that file, okay, that is addressed to Chitu from Ravi, with the heading reminder, with the body don't forget me this weekend. Okay, so that's the note. Okay, so this note can be saved in a file, and I can share the file, and if I have a program which can parse the XML or which can read multiple content from multiple places, right, then I will be able to display the content onto an HTML page as well. So which means that I can connect HTML, XML, JavaScript and CSS and create a good simple standalone static page or with some content scrolling through, etc. Okay, so the note above is quite self-descriptive. It has sender and receiver information. It also has a heading and a message body, but still this XML document does not do anything. Okay, it's just information wrapped in tags. So that is what you need to understand. Someone must write a piece of code to send, receive or display it. Correct, right? So that is the reason why we came across this thing called beautiful soup. So you can write a code which will read XML, which will do something with the XML that is that you are getting. Okay, you can update the content in the XML, you can send it back by email or something to me, right, or I can send it across to a website, and if that website has the code necessary to display that XML, right, I can do that. So someone must write a piece of software to send, receive or display it. Okay, and XML itself doesn't do anything. If you store a file in XML, right, and you open it in your web browser, it won't show you anything except some tags and some separators. Okay, so with XML you invent your own tags, and XML separates data from HTML. So if you need to display dynamic data in your HTML document, right, so earlier when I mentioned about the dynamic nodes, right, if I have a application which can display the XML which contains these nodes, right, then I should have JavaScript, HTML and CSS I mentioned. And the reason why I mentioned JavaScript is that HTML cannot itself do any processing, and JavaScript is a client side scripting language. Okay, like Python, which is a Python or Perl or Ruby or anything which is like a server side scripting language. So with JavaScript and with HTML you can actually do some basic stuff with your XML. Okay, so with XML you invent your own tags, and XML separates data from HTML. Okay, and rest of the things I think you can read. So unique features of XML, like sharing of data, transporting data, change of platform, availability of data. So which means that it's a common. So how many have you come across this particular term? So this is a different aspect altogether. It stands for CORBA, Common Object Request Broker Architecture. It's a standard defined by Object Management Group that enables software components written in multiple computer languages and running on multiple computers to work together. Okay, so this is the basic thing for the what do you call as the distributed system, or the internet as we see it. Okay, so we can see that for the data exchange and the data interchange, etc., right, some of the computers may be storing the bits in least LSB format, some of them may be storing it in the MSB as the it is like the little endian and the big endian formatting for the different architectures of computer systems, which will make it complicated to share the data between the different cross-platform systems. Okay, so that is where we have something called CORBA, etc., and we can also look at something called JSON and XML. Okay, so those are like some simple data interchange formats. Okay, So JSON is a lightweight data interchange format, and it completely is language independent, and XML is a markup language that defines a set of rules for encoding documents in a format that is both human readable and machine readable. Okay, so it depending on what kind of data you want to, or how you want to store the data, you can store it in either say a simple XML, okay, or in JSON. Okay, so if you look at a simple JSON and XML and JSON for why is it not loading properly? Okay, it's employee information, employees, employee name, okay, and so a number of employees are listed here. Okay, so on the right side it shows somewhat similar to how the XML would be. Okay, you can have some tools to transform from XML to HTML, XML to JSON, or JSON to XML. All those things are possible. Okay, so the major thing that you need to understand is this is just a data store, and this is just a specification to specify how you will store the data. And once you store the data, right, you would have created a particular structure. Say when you learned C programming language, struct, and when you learned Python programming language, class, and when you learned when you learned classes and structures, right, you have essentially come across a way to represent an object with multiple attributes on the computer memory, right? So this is similar. This is also a structure which is representing the data in a particular format, and this is an example for a JSON. Okay, so you can have it in JSON or in XML, and based on what are the tags and everything that you will be using, right, in the JSON and XML, you would be using the parsers to handle it accordingly. So the parsers will be data specific, and the data, right, that you will be sharing in the XML has to be again in a particular agreeable format. So let's look for something called SVG. Okay, so I'm looking for XVG and XML. Okay, so what if I tell you SVG, I searched for SVG over here, right? What if I tell you this SVG, right, is actually called scalable vector graphics, and it is a graphic that you are seeing here, but it is actually stored as a text. So let us just take a look at the scalable vector graphics in Wikipedia. So I went to this Wikipedia page, and yeah, so over here, right, I can see an example, and this is of a picture that you see over here, which is with some greenish background with an yellow circle with a half red bounding box and a diagonal blue color, etc. And this is an SVG file. Okay, so what I'm saying is that this file that you see here, the graphic image that you see here on the screen, is actually this particular code that you see here. Okay, now if I have a particular tool, say let me copy this code. Okay, let me go here, let me create a folder called SVG. Okay, and let me open a terminal. Okay, JSVG, will it take me there? No, because this is the first time I'm going there. So cd/media, not home, noob, courses, web technology, SVG, all right, and Emacs, NW, test.svg. Okay, so I'm just creating a text file. I've used my Emacs editor in no window mode, saved it, and I've quit from there. Okay, you can see that all I did was just save the, so let me do a cat test.svg. Okay, you can see that this is the content. It's a simple text file, correct? Let me see file test.svg. It will show you that it is a svg scalable vector graphics image, while the content is actually just text. And if I go here and right click and open with image viewer, right, what you need to understand here is that this image viewer knows that it is an svg file, and svg file uses a set of specific tags, etc. And because I know the tags, because the software, the image viewer knows the tags, I was able to open it with that particular software. Okay, so that is the example with regards to XML, HTML, XML, JSON and SVG. So SVG is simple XML file. So this is an XML file, and just wanted to show you what it is. Okay, so the what is the advantage of this particular file? Let me open it with Inkscape. Inkscape is actually an SVG editor as well, so I can draw with it. So I'm trying to open it with the particular software called Inkscape. Okay, so it's a scalable vector graphics. Now the advantage with the scalable vector graphics is, on the right side I'm going to zoom the image that is there. Okay, I'm just zooming it to, what is the zoom value? It is 366%. I'm zooming it to 450. I'm zooming it approximately to 1000%. And if I go across and see the content, right, I can see that it has not caused any blurring of the pixels, because there are no pixels in this particular image. The pixels that are shown are just rendered from the code that you have seen. Okay, so if I look at the text, no, I think there is a way I can look at looking in the content. Also, if I want, I can create new drawings with this tool, and it will just update the file, okay, as a text file alone. So let me just close it. So that was the example with regards to XML, HTML and SVG. SVG is an example of XML. Okay, JSON and XML are two different ways in which you will use it to store data and share the data. So let me see if I have more to share about XML. Now for the structure of the XML, you can have the XML version. What is the encoding that you are using? I'm not going to tell you about encoding, or let me just tell you, like example is Unicode, ISO 88591. Or it can be different other encoding like Chinese, European character set, etc. Okay, so the encoding in which I have put the text in, and which version of XML it is, and then the not. Okay, and so it will have a root, child, subchild, closing child, closing root, right? So it will have somewhat, it will have a, let me show you that, yeah, okay, let me, XML, okay, it will have, so it will have something like this. And since we are not going to use any predefined tags, you can name the tags as you want, but make sure that subchild is subchild at the closing part also. It should not get typing mistake, or else it will not work. It will cause a problem when you do the parsing. So another example is here, bookstore, book category cooking, okay, then book category. So this is, you have a bookstore which contains books, which has 3 different categories of books. And so each book, right, there are 3 books mentioned here. Each book belongs to a particular category. It has a particular title, author, year, price, right? So this is how you will enter the details. So if you want to imagine, right, you can actually create a simple shopping cart with this particular information alone and JavaScript. Okay, so with regards to the XML syntax rules, the XML syntax rules are very simple and logical. The rules are easy to learn. So just like HTML, HTML has some tags which are not closing, right? But XML should have a closing tag. XML, all the elements in XML should have a closing tag. Okay, so bookstore slash bookstore, book slash book, book slash book, price slash price, year slash price, year. Okay, author slash author, title slash title. Okay, and XML tags are case sensitive. You cannot have you cannot have this, you know, small or small and are two different. Okay, in XML. So XML elements must be properly nested. Okay, which means that, you know, you cannot have B opening first and then the I opening next and B closing first. Okay, it should be properly nested. So B, B, I, or BI and IB. Okay, and so XML documents must have a root element. So it should always have a root element, as we have seen over here, right? We'll start with the root element, and that's very important. So bookstore is the root element here, right, in this particular example. And XML attribute value must be quoted. Okay, so if you have a value for a particular attribute like date, okay, then you should quote this value. You should put the values in double quotes, not in not without quotes. You should use the double quotes. That is shown like how it is highlighted here. Okay, so I think let's leave the rest of the parts for XML as a reading exercise, and I want you to go through it. Okay, each of it, because I don't think it really can be something that can be explained, because or else I need to look at a lot of, you know, use cases and have to tell you the examples. So please go through this document that is available to you on the Google Drive that I have already shared with you. Go through the XML part. So let me stop here today for today. Okay, so the idea is that we are into web development or web technology. We have started with HTML, then we learned a bit of CSS. I introduced you to server side scripting and client side scripting somewhat, like Python, JavaScript, Ruby I mentioned. Then I mentioned to you something about JavaScript. Okay, JavaScript we have not learnt as such, it's just a client side scripting language. Then we mentioned about XML, JSON and SVG also as an example today. So essentially what we have learned is how we will work or develop websites or pages and put it on the internet. Okay, so so to continue, we will be learning I'm sorry, not this one, CSOE13. Where is CSOE13? Let me see, Control F, CSOE13. So we will be learning JavaScript and we will be learning a bit of PHP, etc. Okay, so that's it guys. So let us continue from the next class. If you have any questions, you may ask now or I'll leave.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Shubham.
Sir, I have a doubt. Means not regarding this the same topic which you taught today.
Okay.
Means in general in some web development. Means I have a doubt in React framework, sir. Means I'm learning that. So in that I have a problem. Can you please help me with that? I want to know the use case of, sir, use effect hook. Sir,
I may not be the best person to help you with that because I am the I am a back-end person. Okay, I'm never a
Oh.
front-end person. So
Oh.
what I would suggest is talk to Dinesh, your senior,
Yes.
and talk to Dinesh. If he is not able to help you right away, he will at least be able to show you someone who will be able to help you with it. Talk to Dinesh, or do you know someone called Fahad? He is
Yes,
your super
yes, sir,
senior.
Father.
Yeah, so talk
Yes,
to
yes.
Dinesh and Fahad, or else another person is Mayank. I think he is
Okay, sir.
probably your junior in electronics. Okay, talk
No,
to
no,
the
Mayank is with us, sir. He's
okay with
our
your
batch.
batch. Okay, talk to these three people. They might be able to give you some pointers. Or can you please send it in the text box what you have mentioned?
Okay, sir.
What is it? Or I'll write. Can you please tell?
Use effect hook, sir.
Use effect hook. Okay, sure. I'll also take a look at that about how I can help you with that, and I'll definitely get back to you. But these
Okay,
are
sir.
the three students who have definitely worked with React.js.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Okay. I
Yeah.
will ask them.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Good work. Others also, please try continuing, exploring different things, like how Shubham was trying to go ahead with React.js, etc. It's just a JavaScript framework, okay? Like jQuery. So React.js is another JavaScript framework which would help him do a lot of, you know, um, a lot of things with websites, just like how we have the meet.google.com, right? This is not a very simple website that we are using right now. This is a complicated website with some complicated HTML and content coming from different parts, people joining from different parts, etc., right? So it has a lot of components. So we will be continuing with that in the next class, how we will learn the different components, etc. Okay guys, bye.